Over the last couple of weeks, I've been preaching on some of the characteristics of what it means to be an above-average Christian. Well, then this week I got to thinking, why am I preaching a series on above-average Christians, when maybe what I should have been preaching on is what it means or what it takes to be exceptional Christians. I mean, above average is one thing, but isn't exceptional something else? But then the more I thought about that, the more I got thinking, above average really speaks more to the role and the position of the church. Sometimes when you use the word exceptional, it's a word that scares you, doesn't it? It doesn't scare you, Nancy? Well, that's because you're exceptional. And you're an exception to the rule also. But to me it's scary, for somebody to stand up in the pulpit and say, each and every one of you needs to become an exceptional Christian. Yeah. We kind of save that term for exceptional innovators in our world like Steve Jobs, or exceptional athletes like those who were in the Olympics, or like Diana Nyad, the 64-year-old woman who jumped into the water in Havana, Cuba, and swam all the way to the Florida Keys. The first person to ever do that, and someone who was on Social Security. Those are folks we consider to be exceptional. I think above average is good. And I really think that in the humbleness of the work of the church, above average is the kind of thing that doesn't scare us away, and instead solidifies within our life what it is to take that one step out of being average to be above average. Well, during that time, we have been using over and over again the story of that Old Testament personality, Jabez, as an illustration of a person who was indeed above average. As a matter of fact, in the Living Bible, which is the Bible I'm going to be quoting from today, we hear this word. Jabez was more distinguished than any of his brothers. Now, he might not have been excellent, but he was distinguished. And I believe that we as Christians, when we begin to perform above average, we are going to stand up as distinguished citizens of the church and of the community in which we live. Well, today I want for us to look, so what we've been doing over these last 3 or 4 Sundays is looking at different characteristics or different ingredients of what makes for an above average Christian. I think I conclude the study next week. No, actually 2 more weeks from now we're going to conclude this study. And today, the one tool that I want for us to recognize in being above average as Christians is this book I'm holding in my hands. And this book that Merle is going to be talking about in a little bit. The Bible, and being people of the Bible, is so important to being who we are as Christians and above average. John Wesley, who was the founder of the Methodist Church, and one of the most prolific writers and scholars of his day, John Wesley wrote probably more pamphlets and little manuals about many different subjects, from beekeeping to surgery. But John Wesley said this of himself and of us: be the people of one book. And he wasn't talking about just any book. He was talking about this book. Be the people of the book. Well, in order for us to be above average Christians, we need to be people of the book. One of the things that I appreciate about Gideon's International is the value they place upon getting the Bible into the hands of others. It is such an important feat. And Merle's going to share with you some incredible figures about how many Bibles have been distributed and about how many people still need the Scriptures in their lives. But above average Christians not only have a Bible, but they know the Bible. And they find their life's inspiration in it. I myself credit the Bible above just about everything else for saving my life. And I don't mean that the Bible saved me from being swept in the floodwaters of a terrible rain at some point. What I'm talking about is that the Bible saved me emotionally and spiritually at a time when I really needed that. And this translation of the Bible is the one that changed my life significantly. You see, I grew up in the church in the 50s and the 60s. I was in 5th grade in the early 60s, and like all 5th graders in the United Methodist Church, I was given my Bible. I still have that Bible. It's sitting in my bookshelf right over here. The little 5th grade Bible. But the little 5th grade Bible back in the 60s was the same 5th grade Bible that was given out for the last 50 years before that. It was the black Pew Bible. You've got Bibles there in front of you. They're red Pew Bibles. Well, ours was just a black, Pew Bible that was given to all of the kids. And as I matured through 5th grade and 6th grade and 7th grade, and I moved on, as I was approaching the age of 16, I was having a hard time understanding the Christian concepts, let alone understanding the teachings of the Bible. As I shared with the other group, I think sometimes I'm thick up here. And you can just ask Peggy, and she'll probably tell you that that's the truth. And that thickness applies to the fact that I'm a slow reader. And so here I am trying to read the scriptures. And back in the 60s, if you remember, you only had two versions of the Bible to choose from. You had the Revised Standard Version, which was the official Methodist Bible, or you had the King James Version, which was all the other churches. That was their official version of the Bible. And I could not understand from paragraph to paragraph. I could not gather the concepts. And about the age of 16, I was ready to not only throw away the Bible, but throw away the church and to walk away from it. Then the youth minister at our home church introduced to the youth a new Bible. And it was a paraphrased Bible, and he told us what paraphrased means. It's not printed out by a group of students or studious individuals, but it was written by one man. As a matter of fact, the story behind the Living Bible, which is the Bible he was introducing us to as a paraphrase, was it was written by a pastor who had children who were growing up. And they were having a hard time understanding the stories of the Bible, so he began to rewrite the Bible book by book, first with the New Testament, so that his children could understand it. And he wrote it at a middle school age level, reading level, which was right up my alley. Still is. I'm 61 years old. Give me middle school reading material any day. It so opened up for me an understanding of the love of Jesus. I still use it as a devotional Bible. As a matter of fact, I really immersed myself in it again this week as I remembered that story in my life and how important the Bible became, because I finally, the Bible finally opened up for me a clearer understanding of who this Jesus was and why I should pay attention to him. Now, it doesn't matter to me what translation of the Bible you use. I was sharing with my girl earlier today how I had a friend who was in my small group Bible study, and she had been reading the Bible through every year. She'd been doing it for 14 years when I first met her, and always the King James Version of the Bible. That's neat. But I introduced that congregation to a new Bible that came out in the 90s called the New Living Translation. Not the Living Bible, but the New Living Translation. And I invited her one year to read through the Bible using that version, not just the King James Version, which is what she used all the time. She read through it. She says, I was dutifully challenged by you, Earl, but I will never do it again. Why? Because for her, the poetic way that the King James is written was just so special to her after all those years. So remember the Good News version of the Bible and how powerful that was as it moved through the 1960s and 70s and 80s. Find a version of the Bible that works for you and get into it. Now, this particular one that I have in my hands is a special Bible. I've got several of these. I have my original sitting on a bookshelf here in my office. But this one was on my home bookshelf, which kind of surprised me because I didn't know I had one of these sitting on my home bookshelf. And I opened it up, and here's what I found on the inside cover. It says, "To Harriet at Christmas, 1973, from Smitty." Now, I'm not Smitty. My dad's Smitty. Smitty bought Harriet, his wife, this Bible in 1973. And that took me back a whole bunch of years. And I remember the conversation that my dad and I had, probably in November of 1973. That was the year Peggy and I got married. We got married in August of 73, and we're still living at home, finishing up our college. And I remember my dad came to me once. I wasn't yet interested in being a minister. I hadn't felt called into the ministry. I was still struggling with what it was to be a Christian. But he came to me and he said, "Earl, I want to get Mom a new Bible for Christmas. Which one do you recommend?" And I said, "Well, Dad, the one that our youth minister recommended was this one." And he went out and he bought this Bible for my mom. And my mom started to read through the Bible. And I bet you for the first time in her life, she read through that. Well, my mom died in 2001. My dad died about 4 years ago. And I'm sure that as we were cleaning out his house, I found this 4 or 5 years ago. And I brought it to my house. And now I have 1973. So it's just so much fun to discover what it is to be people of the book and how powerful that is. So I again suggest that you look for the book that speaks to you. Now I've mentioned all of this because you need to become people of the book. To be above average Christians, we need to read the Scriptures and study the Scriptures and know the Scriptures and be able to witness to the Scriptures. I'm going to ask you a question right now. I don't want anybody to raise their hand. Especially you, Rick. When you weren't here, Sandy, and we got talking about this rose, but he was, he doesn't embarrass you. None of you raised your hand on this question. But this is a serious question. I want you to answer this question in your heart. I want you to answer this question in your heart. And the question is this. Did you read the Bible this last week? How many of you, don't raise your hand, how many of you read your Bible this week? The reason I ask that question is because of this. Statistics state that the Bible is still the most popular and purchased book in all of history. And it continues to be year after year after year. We purchased 100 Bibles for Vacation Bible School, and we had about 84 students show up for Vacation Bible School this year, and we gave away 84 Bibles. Every one of those students got a complete, full Old Testament, New Testament version of the Bible in a kid's translation. That's awesome. That's happening all the time. People are giving away the Bible as gifts. That's neat. But the other part of the statistic is this. It appears that at any given time, less than 10% of the Christian homes are reading the Bible. It's pretty bad. So the question I ask is legitimate. Did you read your Bible this past week? And if not, you might want to ask yourself why. In today's scripture passage from the New Testament, the Apostle Paul reminds a young pastor named Timothy of why the Bible is important. And he says this. He says, the whole Bible was given to us by inspiration from God and is useful. Here it is. If you want to become an above average Christian, here's one of the keys to it. It is useful to teach us what is true. Think about that. In a world in which we have so many falsehoods that come to us through our TV sets or our media or wherever, from our neighbors or whatever, we have become a world of falsehoods. The Bible teaches us what is true. And to make us realize what is wrong in our lives. It straightens us out and helps us to do what is right. See, that's the kind of stuff that makes us above average. But you have to get into the Bible. You've got Bibles there in front of you. They're red Bibles. Well, ours are just. And then the conclusion of these books. It is God's way of making us well prepared at every point, fully equipped to do good for everyone. There's your definition of above average, right there. To be fully equipped to do good